Hello, welcome back to another episode of the Immigrant podcast. I'm your host Abin. I'm once again joined by my co-host Vivek. It has been a while since I've seen this boy's face. How are you, my friend? How have things been? And the last I saw you, you were jumping into Hell Week. Have you come out the other side unscathed,
I have
relatively
come
speaking?
out the other side, so I feel good. Like I have a lot more time now, which is great. Like time is the most. I think time is the most important thing. Honestly, is what I realized, and it's good to have a lot more time. I can do a lot more things. Feel really good. Feel really strong. So that's good, man. It's been great. How have you been?
For me, I am just tired, dude. There's so much is happening. Where with the company I'm working with, we're currently launching, so the marketing and planning for it is just kind of like taken over my life. I also consult, and that's taken over my weekends, and then I have to edit podcasts, which I have like been lagging behind on. So I'm just taking it one day at a time and just trying to like knock off as much as I possibly can. But aside from that, it's been all good.
Well, awesome. I know you're gonna I know you're gonna get through. You have what three podcasts? I'm sure you're gonna get through it. You'll be fine.
To I have so much to do, but don't remind me. But let's get into the episode. Vivek. Could you like
Yeah.
introduce our guest for today?
Yes, I would like to introduce our guest Prithvi. So Prithvi Chowhan is the co-founder of Varalife, a company that is into cell nourishing and making a person age better. He's currently based in Bangalore, but he graduated from the University of Texas at Austin and has to create high impact products at GE Healthcare, TripAdvisor, Citi, and Goldman Sachs. During his stints at various companies across the US, Prithvi realized the enormous impact that new age developments in healthcare and technology can have on humans, but noticed a clear lack in representation in companies focused on creating holistic nutritional supplementation products for longevity. With a keen interest in changing the status quo, he wanted to create a company that can effectively offer a complete longevity ecosystem to consumers at scale. That led him to move back to India and co-founding Wala Life. We seem to have a lot to unpack here. Prithvi, welcome to the show.
Hey guys, thanks for having me. Yeah, I think that was an introduction I didn't expect, but yeah, it's very great. But yeah, thanks for having me, guys. It's a pleasure to be here.
Hey, thanks for coming on, man. And I think this is going to be a really interesting episode. And judging by the introduction, there is definitely a lot to unpack, but we'll get to it. What I think we should do is like let's like rewind it back. We do this with all our guests. We go back to the start, and we kind of understand like how each of our guests grew up in the cities they did. So you grew up in India, spent most of your childhood here.
Yeah.
Anything specific about moving to the US? Any reasons as to why that was on your radar at the time?
Yeah, I spent most like all of my childhood in Bangalore. I've been a Bangalore boy through and through. Um, yeah, and I think for me, you call it pivotal. I think I just call it by chance of going to the US. Uh, so the funny story is that after 10th grade, when we were entering into 11th grade, everyone was like, "Oh, what do you want to do after 12th and stuff like that?" And I was like, "Why not just like focus on get into the stream of going for those coaching classes that for the JE, etc." I was the driving force behind like enrolling or telling my parents to get me enrolled there. Got enrolled, uh, went for three classes early in the morning, and the third day I realized this is not for me. The fourth day was the awkward conversation with the coaching class coordinator that I want a refund for whatever I want to do. US wasn't even in the timeline for me at that point of time. A majority of the decision of me going to the US was pretty much halfway through 11th when um, it was due to my peers, right? A lot of us started having conversations about what do we want to do, how do we want to do, and what stream do we want to go into, what do you want to pursue later in life. And a lot of them were very oriented towards moving to US or UK, etc. And I didn't even know what SATs were until like towards the end of my 11th grade. I bombed my first SATs. Just went into realize like, oh, it's just like verbal and I'm pretty good in English. Like, why not just give it out? So
No, I have made
first
that mistake. I know what you feel. I know exactly how you feel.
uh, yeah. And yeah, I think I kind of gotten more serious towards the end of 11th grade. I think it was a two different things that I had to handle. I had to get comfortable with the decision that I want to move to another country for my education, and that happened over a period of time when I started speaking to people, doing my research about the colleges that I want to go into. Why is it different to go or study in the US? I did research as deep as like looking at the pedagogy of professors, teaching various courses, etc., in the US, and it was a different conversation to have with my parents because no one in my family has gone abroad for education at all. So it was me sitting down with my parents, explaining to them what the process is, at least like as best I knew. And like my father was pretty open to it. It was like we had an honest conversation about what do you want to do in life? Are you going to come back from the US? Do you want to stay there? And how does the financing look like, etc. And towards the end of like 12th and stuff like that, up until I had put my applications there, I think it was pretty much decided I was going to go to the US. So it was like a year and a half long process about me getting comfortable, me discovering, getting comfortable with it, convincing the people around me, and creating a support system that would actually lead me to go to the US after 12th. Yeah.
I know you say that it was unplanned and it just happened, but I feel like there was a story there. A lot of times we go down a certain path not because we want to go down that path, but we kind of eliminate the alternative, which I think is what you did. You know, you kind of eliminated this path and said, okay, you know what, I don't want to do this. So
Yeah.
let's see what else are my options. You know, what are the other options I have, right? And then you go down. I feel like you kind of picked the path based. It yes, it was process of elimination, but also there were you were very focused and you were very deliberate about this course of action, right? So I think that's interesting. uh, why US specifically and not Australia or UK? You know, a lot of people go all over the world, right? But why US specifically?
The particular stream that I wanted to choose, or like the major that I wanted to go into, was computer science. I think up until now, even up until now, there is a lot of innovation that is happening in the US in the stream of computer science, right? In terms of the NSF funding that major universities get for research, in terms of the kind of innovations that come across. Now, even if you see the major publishing, like at that point in time, I didn't think about all of these things, but a lot of it was from the back end that in the US a lot more innovation is happening compared to in the computer science field compared to US and Australia. A lot of the talents that I saw in the professorships that across UW Madison as well as later on UT Austin, a lot of them like graduated from Oxford or like Melbourne universities and then moved to US and stuff. So in the back of my mind, I kind of had the intent that if these guys are moving to the US to kind of pursue the kind of research they want, at least in this field of AI or systems or compilers, etc., whatever they want to get into, I think US is the right place to be. I think if I create a foundation there, I would kind of get into the kind of research, or at that point of time whatever kind of research that I want to get into. And it kind of paid off because like after my first year of undergraduation, a lot of research opportunities opened up to me, and it was pretty fun doing it, and all professors were pretty open taking like a fresher or like a freshman into their research, etc.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. Awesome. Okay. So let's go on, right? So you went to the US. You did this amazing education in Texas.
Yeah.
You started working there, right? So you did pretty well. You know, you were a product manager at pretty big, well established companies like, for example, Goldman Sachs. Um, how did just snapshot at that moment in time, right? How did you feel at that moment in time, and was something missing in your life? If you can look back and share.
That's a good question, because so this kind of requires a rewind to my internship that I had in my after my junior year when I was at TripAdvisor. I was pretty much a SWE intern there doing software engineering, and at that point of time, I kind of realized that I do not want to do software engineering. This is not for me. I'm good at it, but it's not something that I want to do for the rest of my life. Coming into the fourth year, like I realized that I like product management seemed pretty cool. Why not just be a generalist and see what aspects of technology that I want to see into? And kind of started applying to various companies, etc. Like doing the entire senior year cycle of interviewing with various companies. And at that point of time, in the back of my head, when I did speak to a lot of people working at these companies, or like a lot of immigrants working at these companies, of one thing really struck out to me, that I didn't really care about the H1B lottery up until the senior year when the reality strikes as to like when the company applies for you and you have three chances and stuff like that. And for me, I was like, okay, I have only three chances, and I'm really not okay with the idea of leaving the fate of what I want to do. So uh, ultimately, in at senior year, what I had in my head was I have 3 years to get as much experience that I want. I didn't think past those 3 years, and I was like, so might as well focus on really what I want to do. I applied for product management at various companies. I started my career at Citi and then post at Goldman Sachs. And everywhere I went, I still remember the first day I was at Citi. Like I was being introduced to the team, and the manager had a one-on-one with me, and she asked me like, "What are your goals? What do you want to accomplish in the role of a product manager?" And I just told her, "I am here for 3 years, so whatever you want, whatever value I can add in 3 years is what I really want to do." And she was like, "Please don't tell it to everyone else. It's fine that you told it to me." And she was pretty cool about it. But yeah, it was product management was fun. I worked more than what I wanted to, 10 to 12 hour days. But yeah, something was still missing in the sense that I still had a uh, I didn't. It felt like I didn't belong to a certain extent in terms of the country or the situation that I was in. No matter what changed, I was given a lot of ownership at these jobs, etc. And but it still didn't feel like I was truly accomplishing or adding value. I think I was pretty good at it from my performance reviews that I got in these companies. But at the end of it, it was pretty much that okay. Like if I get a new feature out into the launch a new feature, if I launch a new product and stuff like that, I'm still accomplishing just a small part of it. I truly want to own something end to end, and the reason behind this was basically like I come from a business of like my family business of pharmaceuticals, and I'd seen my parents etc own something end to end, right, from like
Yeah.
starting it to accomplishing it, taking it to market and doing all of it. And I felt that like even in product management I was restricted to certain things, and like they were like, okay, like you just own this part of the product, and I was like, TK, okay, that's fine for me. But through those 3 years, I think even though the positions were pretty great for me in terms of like on the resume and stuff like that, in terms of like what I really wanted to accomplish, I did accomplish quite a bit there, but it felt incomplete in terms of like what a value I was creating there. Um, and yeah, I think it sounds good on paper, but I think it was really formative for me as to like really give me clarity as to what I didn't want and gave me direction to what I really wanted to do in life.
I think there's a point you made about like just having like having you mean where you feel like you're not getting a lot done, and given that you come from a background where you have a family that runs their own business, you kind of
Yeah.
like it's very alien to just be shunted into a little box where you have one responsibility and that's what you have to carry out. And I get, and for a lot of people that's fine, but like seemingly like in your case and in the case of many, that there's that sense of emptiness that creeps in where you're just like you're trying to figure out what more can you do, and it's very unfulfilling where you're in a role where you're just a cog in a very big machine, as opposed to just being or rather being a very big cog in an otherwise big machine as well, right? So I that really resonated with me because I felt something similar as well, working with big organizations where you don't tend to, even though you're contributing, that value that you should feel within yourself isn't just isn't there.
And I mean, how do you quantify it, right? Now, let's say, for example, you
Yeah,
add certain value. Uh, Now, let's say, for example, I was a product manager for a certain part of a user journey, right? And I released this feature into the world and stuff like that, right? Up until given that it's a very small part of like a really huge feature or like a really huge product, eh, how do you quantify that the certain thing that you did was because of you, right?
yeah,
Ultimately it just feels like okay, I launched something into it, and that it this kind of thing kind of in at least what I felt, it creates a detachment from what you are actually doing, right? It says like if I'm not getting, if I'm not able to quantify as to the value that I add, then how do I really know that the work that I'm putting in is actually working? So it's
yeah.
just that kind of feeling that I was not okay with, and I think yeah, it led to whatever I did later on.
You said so. This is one aspect of what you said, which was, yes, the professional fulfillment was not was not what you're looking for. You wanted more ownership. But you did say something else, which I want to just, double click on for 1 second. You said it also, you felt like you didn't belong, not just professionally, but also on a more holistic level, which was
Yeah.
probably more personal. So, what if you could just dive in a little bit more there? What were you referring to there, and how did you feel at that point?
Now this isn't related to anything with assimilation in different cultures or anything like that, right? But it is more related to the perspective that how you feel at a particular position in a country, or etc. So now let's say, for example, I came back to India every year, right? And the 15 days that I spent in India were truly remarkable. Like, I had the network here, I had the social support here, I had things apart from just professional fulfillment, like really supporting me through and through. While as in the US, sure, you had a lot of independence, but at the same point of time, because of that independence, you truly felt that you were in it all alone to do certain things. And it's not about like, of course, you can create a network, you can have people do everything along with it. But I just felt that I had such a big social system here that it, even though I had nothing to do with India at that point of time in terms of work, I just felt that this was a much more comfortable space where I will be more successful in life. Or and I think it has pretty much been true because of that. And when you it's just a thing that, let's say, for example, you go to a job in the morning at 9, and then you come back like at 5, 6, etc., right? It's not just about that. It's about other things in life, what you do on the weekends, what you do, who do you share your happiness with, your sadness with, etc. And to build that social system, it takes quite a bit of time to do that. And I think so I may have built that social system over a longer period of time if I would have stayed in US. But I think the uh, as fate comes to be, I think I just built it in India here, and it felt much more natural for me to do it.
Sure. I mean, the next question I had was what made you decide to move back to India, but I think you kind of did, step into that. So I'm going to skip over that.
I think there's a
Uh,
story there as well in
okay.
terms of, yeah. Um, so this was in 2020. Most of my 3 year, 2.5 years, 3 years of working in the US was pretty much remote, right? When everyone went remote during COVID. Um, and it was towards the end of 2020 when I had a family obligation, due to which I came back to India, and I had to stay here for an extended period of time.
Okay.
And I think at that point of time, there was a flight embargo of you not traveling to other countries, etc.
Yeah.
And during that time, like, obviously I was stuck in India. I was still working. I was working nights due to the time zone, and I had the mornings to myself. And all for the 6 months, all the mornings I actually spent in kind of determining what do I want to do after this particular thing, right? Like, I was really passionate about healthcare. I kind of visited manufacturing sites in and around Bangalore, doing like, do I want to get into manufacturing? Do I want to get into health tech? Do I want to get into something diagnostic related, etc. And just doing fact finding missions and stuff like that. And after a certain period of time, by the fifth or sixth month, I think I found my mornings much more productive than the nights, in terms of what I really want to do. And I was truly interested in like this thing that I was going through for a 6 year thing. So if in June, I booked my flight tickets. I was like, I have an ongoing project. I'm going to get done with it, and then I'm going to put in my papers and just resign. And in June onwards, I think we were just getting into the product launch. I was kind of putting in 70-hour weeks because we had a product launch imminent. And I was like, by the 3 months into it, by like August, I was like, I'm kind of done with it. I'm going to put in my papers, and I did it. I just gave the 2 week notice, and I was like, I'm going to take a 1 month break, and I'm going to move back to India. And by the end of September, I just came back. I was like, I would rather dedicate 100% of the time to doing something that it truly interests me in healthcare, and I did just that. And I think that handling this side by side along with my full time job was not becoming feasible after a certain point of time. And I think that if you don't have skin in the game, you aren't going to truly accomplish. And I think that was the thing that I truly did after that. And that's when I truly moved back to India by the end of September 2021.
You grew up in Bangalore. Like, okay, I think I'm gonna detour here a little bit because we're all three Bangaloreans. Where did you go to school in Bangalore?
I went to Bishop Cotton's boys' school. Yeah. Yeah. I went to cotton.
You, oh, lovely. That makes three of us. So we're all
Yeah,
Oh, it's
Cottonians. So this is
us.
a
Okay.
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. Where Vivek is 2007, I'm 2009. What batch are you?
2015.
Oh, wow, you're much like you saw a whole other world compared to us. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Now this whole podcast got. This is the first time it's happened. We've had three Cottonians on one podcast. It's a very
yeah,
strange situation.
Oh, wow.
Uh, anyway,
Yeah.
but getting back to the question, so
Yeah.
like this is your first, like your first job is outside India. You've like not been through the college system here, and then you come back, and I assume there's a bit of a culture clash when it comes to the working conditions. And just generally take us through that. Like, what were some of the things that stood out to you that suddenly seemed very alien uh, when it came to the Indian working ecosystem?
That I had to work on Saturdays was number one. It's pretty like I used to look forward to my Fridays, right? Like I used to have my Saturdays to myself where I used to prep for Sunday, and then Sunday used to just be a chill day, and I used to move on to Monday, and I had to work on Saturdays, and that was and people seem all right with it, right? Like I that was something else for me to kind of get used to. But most of it, I think it was in the work culture, right? I think how scope is well defined in the US as to what you're supposed to do, as to when things are supposed to be accomplished, and how and by when things are supposed to be accomplished. It's very much put into paper, contract signed, everything like that, right? A big culture shock for me that everything in India works on relationships, like what kind of relationships you develop with whom, and how that happens. And I don't think it's as a bad thing. I just think that it's a different way of working, and in certain cases, a very, very efficient way of working. It took me some time to kind of get used to it. Like with whatever vendors that I have today, the way I interact with my vendors now versus how I interacted initially was very different, and I can clearly see the results about how I kind of gotten used to that. That's number one. Apart from that, I think now this is nothing against work-life balance or anything like that, right? But a major, like whenever I've heard people like come back to India, or who have worked in the US and come back to India, they come like a major topic is work-life balance, right? Like how work and life balance is not there's not a clear segregation between the both of them in India versus the US, and it's just that I think over the period of time, at least like the people in my peer group, or like in my friend circle, who have come back to India and have started their own companies and stuff like that, we all of us kind of realized that I think India isn't about work-life balance; it's about work-life integration. I think work always goes on.
Yeah.
Yeah, work always goes on. I think it's just about like how you prioritize, and what do you want to do at a certain point of time. I think once you get used to it, India is a very fun place to work, and I think it's a lot of hustle mindset here. I love it here, given everything that is going on. So yeah, I think these are the major things. I think some people are not okay with this kind of informal lifestyle about not having clear boundaries about work-life balance, etc. I think it's just about personal preference about what you choose to do and what you want in life, and etc. So yeah.
awesome. That makes sense. I mean, yes, the work-life integration is a very strong concept. It is different in the US. You're absolutely right. Um, I'm just thinking out loud, right? So this is a very interesting concept, but I just wonder, are parts of the US becoming like India, right? Like you look at California, you look at the Bay Area, you look at parts of Texas. Are they becoming a little bit more like, hey, let's go towards work life integration? Because I feel like that is changing in pockets. But overall, the US is what you're saying, and it's absolutely right. I do believe that there's some change in pockets where people are working and normalizing working really long hours, and they're just okay with it. I feel like it's also true in parts of New York where people work in investment banking and financial services. I think like long hours and integration is just kind of part of their lives.
Yeah.
But yes, in pockets probably not, but overall definitely that's a very fundamental difference between working in the US versus in India. So I totally agree with you.
Yeah, investment banking is a bit different, right? You're putting it. Let's say, for example, consulting as well, right? You're putting in hours through and through throughout the day.
Yeah,
You have a check in at 9, and you check out at 8 in the evening and stuff like that, and you're working through out of it. Work life integration is a bit different in the sense that I mean that work and life goes on together in India. Like that's the kind of thing that is different. Consulting is that, and if you're in investment banking, you're working through and through, and your life is something different.
Yeah,
But integration is different, where like both of them go hand in hand, like even on Sundays. And I think that that's kind of one thing that does not stress you out.
that makes sense. So okay, so just so back to your timeline, right? So you moved back to India,
Yeah.
and you had this clear idea that you wanted to start something of your own, and of course, there were multiple reasons that led to your move back. But you didn't do that initially. You started working. You were working with the company initially for a short period of time, and then you said, okay, I'm gonna go and start my own business, right? So I guess the question is, yes, you wanted to start something of your own. You were pretty sure about that at that point in time. You didn't know what it was, right? But you have your family has some businesses in healthcare, so that kind of gives you some anchor of some sort.
Yeah.
But so I guess my question is, how did you get down the path and walk us through the journey of how you decided where to begin and where to actually go and start something, and how you found that passion to do that.
So when I moved back, I kind of had a few options in terms of which niche of healthcare that I want to actually go forward with. So I could have gone the technology route of focusing on health tech, going into the entire insurance system, electronic health records, modernizing digital health in India, etc. Right. The second one was more pharmaceutical, where I kind of like commercialize certain newer molecules in India, and kind of go forward with it. And the third one was pretty much preventive, in the area, the niche that I was in, uh, where I wanted to go forward with. And when kind of you kind of do the cost benefit analysis of like how much investment that you have to put across various niches, the investments that you need to put across in technology, as well as what do you say, pharma, where you want to commercialize a molecule by phase one, phase two trials and stuff like that, it's quite a lot. So
Yeah.
it kind of broadened down to me that doing something preventive in India after COVID, with the tailwinds of like people being very aware and insurance penetration and out of pocket expenses about preventive healthcare, and people really taking ownership of their health is coming across. And at that point of time, there was like a new wave of preventive healthcare that was seeping into, right? So there's this entire concept called medicine 2.0 to medicine 3.0. So, what medicine 2.0 is what we've had for the last century, right? Where people focused on solving for chronic disorders and diseases. Like we don't have tuberculosis outbreaks anymore, or cholera outbreaks, typhoid outbreaks. And the major thing that they focused on was mortality, right? How do I make a person live as long as possible, no matter what the health condition, no matter whether the person is living the best or like the has the optimal quality of life, but pushing the limits of like age, right?
All right.
So the average lifespan kind of increased over the last century, and the human race did a pretty good job in it. Now, medicine 3.0 is something very different in the sense that why do I only want to focus on living longer, right? Why do I want to make sure that rather than having a normal health, I want to focus on having optimal health.
Yeah.
And there was a shift from the main goal being lifespan to health span, in the sense that lifespan is the total number of years that we live, and health span is the total number of productive years that you have in your life. And so if you increase and push the boundaries of health span, I think that's where medicine 3.0 comes. It's a much more proactive approach, where people try to take interventions much before uh, they are hit with any disorder or disease, etc. And this seemed like something very nice to do, because given pharmaceuticals are much more medicine 2.0 kind of origins,
Yeah.
having or structuring out into medicine 3.0 was pretty great, in the sense that I wasn't in any way, I was diversifying something that my family is doing. So it was me, my sister, who's also my co-founder, Jessie, and Dhruva, who was my freshman year roommate. We kind of decided that we want to go into this phase of longevity, in terms of doing that. And uh, we are still among one of the only two companies that are really focusing on longevity supplementation in India. And the reason that we did is that India has an immense amount of talent pool of science. So we are pretty much R&D focused company, and we found the talent here pretty easy to find. And for a year and a half, we kind of developed our products, patented it, etc. And then we launched it into the market. So I think uh, apart from feasibility, a lot of it was also structured around how people view preventive healthcare in India. And I think the tailwinds after COVID seemed right in that direction. And I think more than to a certain aspect as well, we just got lucky.
So this, I mean, this kind of really ties into my next question as to what you're doing with Varalife, and I think there's a fair. You've kind of set the foundation for, uh,
Yeah.
like, for the question that is to come, right? So could you just give us a brief insight as to what it is Varalife does, what the problems you're currently trying to solve, and any kind of support you're currently on the lookout for?
So if you look at the longevity ecosystem, right, there are various ways to people are trying to solve for longevity, and this goes ties back to 2013, where there was a groundbreaking paper published called the Hallmarks of Aging. This was, I think, in pretty much like 2 or 3 decades of uh, research on aging, that majority of the scientific community kind of realized that okay, these are the changes that are happening at a cellular level because of which aging happens in our body. So this basically sprung into the longevity industry, and people tried to solve it through the mid-tech, low-tech, high-tech approach of what how people wanted to basically approach longevity. So the high-tech approach is basically what Brian Johnson is doing, where he has a team of
Yeah, I was just
doctors.
about to bring it up. Yeah. I was just about to bring it
Yeah,
up. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
trying to solve yeah. So it's
Hmm.
while it's pretty great about what he's doing, I think it's very inaccessible to a lot of people who don't have
Yes.
that
Hmm.
amount of investment. There is the low tech approach where people just believe that um, changing lifestyle, food habits, etc., can help you live longer. And to a certain extent, that's true. But Varalife is in the mid-tech approach, where we do feel that there are a lot of things in the environment, etc., that we cannot control. And I think certain interventions are needed because of the lifestyles that we have already led, and because of the things that we can't change around you. So that's why we came into the supplementation space to basically augment supplementation to people's lifestyle or longevity routines. And we have launched two products into the market, very specialized niche products. And yeah, I think that's where we are at, where we want to be a company that creates proprietary formulations for longevity and launches it into India. We are in the long term, we are looking to expand to US, UK, and Singapore. These are the places that longevity has really taken off, and I think they would have acceptance for our products. In terms of support, I think sure, like any kind of support is really helpful, but I think we have been one of the reasons uh, we are kind of taking it slow is because we for the timing we want to be a bootstrap company. We truly believe in R&D, and I think we don't want to be answerable to anyone except our R&D outcomes. So yeah, I think for now I think we are fine, but in the future I think we're going to be hiring for a lot of R&D talent in the longer run.
Awesome. Um, I mean, I know you mentioned you wanted to start you want to start something in India, and you gave you kind of articulated the reasons for it. You mentioned the importance of community and the support system, which is kind of the reason why you felt something was missing in the US in the first place. Um, so I guess the question is, if an individual was looking to start a business,
Hmm.
what are some of the parameters or factors you think they should consider? Like, like for example, you spoke about, hey, it's really important to have a sense of community or a strong network or a strong support system. So pick the country where you have that, right? That's an example.
Yeah.
But what are some of the other factors they should consider if they want to start a business, and they're trying to figure out which country they want to start that business in?
Yeah, I think if I were to take whatever you said about having a support system and stuff like that, or like having the anchor to really start something, it just generalizes down into, as a founder, you're trying to mitigate or as many risks as possible, right? Being a founder, it's emotionally, physically, and operationally very daunting. And on a day-to-day basis, all you do is mitigate risk so that work just goes on well. So any kind of place where you can mitigate a risk. Now, let's say, for example, one of the reasons India is kind of the right choice for me is because I have mitigated the risk of market to a certain extent, right? Where there is a tailwind of uh, higher disposable income being spent on preventive healthcare. Now, let's say, for example, if I was there in a country where the tailwinds weren't there, where people weren't that aware of preventive healthcare and still focused on this thing, it's still a risk, right? So look at every single kind of a thing that would help your business, or like doing it. Now, let's say, for example, you require support in terms of network. right? A lot of the people that I know in the healthcare industry in India is because are pretty much based in India. So a lot of it through network and through vendor finding and through all of these things kind of help me mitigate that risk of like setting up a network where I can seek out help into. So it's all about risk mitigation. Secondly, I think I do know a lot of people who've actually taken the uh, O1 visas and EB5 visas of like settling up in the US and stuff like that. So that is also a kind of a risk mitigation, right? Where you have actively invested into the country because of which you don't have to think about a permanent residency in the country, right? I think now let's say, for example, if you're an H1B, I think you will still be thinking about the next renewal of your H1B and getting your passport stamped, etc. So just try to mitigate as many risks as possible, because I think that just luck plays a part, and but mitigating risk just increases your chances of success. That's just a generalized point out of it.
Awesome.
A quick
Awesome.
question on that. I'd like to know, given that you said you set up India as your market,
Yeah.
and trying to get that messaging across to an audience or to like a target, to a community or a set of people that are notoriously resistant to change,
Yeah.
like being, because they believe that the way they've been doing it all the years is the right way, and someone as young and as new who's come onto the scene probably has, is challenging those tried and trusted methods. What sort of pushback have you had, or from, like generally from, or the kind of feedback that you've received while trying to propagate this new way of life? Because I agree with you, for the most part there are certain conditions you just can't change. We live in Bangalore, and in a city that, in the towards the end of May was, and this is unheard of for us, right? The first time we've had showers this year is at the end of May. The pollution levels are at an all-time high. There will be a long-term impact on our health, going forward. So
Yeah.
what kind of pushback have you received from people who you've made this who you've spoken to about Varalife, and what are the reasons you've come up with to combat combat that pushback?
I think
Mm.
that's a very interesting question, because when we initially started launching our products into the market, one of the things that we did was carry out small exercises of like having small performance spends across US, UK, and India, um, and seeing what the response was to our products, right? And I think we expected the US and UK to be much more accepting to these solutions, given that the population is much more aware about preventive healthcare. But we were proven actually completely wrong, in the sense that our Indian consumers beat the trend to 3x, 4x kind of the responses that we got. And 1 year down the line, since we have started sale of our products, I think India has been a primary market. Now, that isn't saying that we haven't had pushback in India. In India, you're combating a different set of problems, right? Where people kind of look at us in terms of like, oh, we are mostly a allopathic based company, and we believe in Ayurveda, and Ayurveda is the things that we want to do in life, and I think to a certain extent it does help, right? I think, but what we have truly done in terms of making sure that we have a good amount of customers and we're retaining the customers is education, continuous education. Like like how I explained to you about the hallmarks of aging and stuff like that. The elevator pitch about why longevity in ecosystem came in India is after much more refinement of giving pitches to 500 customers about what longevity really is. And
Marketing 101.
yeah. uh, and yeah, it refined me over a period of time. I think when I look back at my creative library about how we were advertising Life, I think it's completely changed. And education, I think, is the only way that we want to do. And given one of the things that we are one of the category creators in India for longevity, we had to focus on an education based approach. And lately, like over a period of time, what I have realized is that people's non-acceptance for the certain things or a hate for certain things is very shallow, but like a mile wide. So over a period of time, once they see their peers using it, they see themselves using it, or like they see their family using it, ultimately it's pretty accepting of that. And education is the only way to go forward with. Unless people don't truly understand, I don't think so people should be shelling out any amount of cash from there this thing to buy a product.
So I don't have any more questions, Abin, unless you do. I think, for me, this was really informative as a podcast. I learned a bunch, like for me, the couple of things that stood out to me as you were speaking, Prithvi, was the first one being, in life you don't always have to choose a path. Sometimes by you can eliminate a path that you don't want to choose and then end up on the path that you by default that you want to be on, and that
Mm.
works out really well. The second takeaway, and this is applicable to I think most people. It's not really about what you achieve in any country you live. That is important, yes, but ultimately it comes down to your sense of belonging, the sense of community, the support system you feel, or you create for yourself in that country. Because without that, everything else is material. It's material success, but it's not really gonna fulfill you, right? So I think that was, for me, the second most important takeaway. And of course, I really enjoyed what you said about the advice you gave to founders. To start a business, on risk mitigation, and some of the things you think about as you decide, hey, where do I want to start a business, right? If I want to start a business, which country should that be, and if I have an option to do it in more than one country. So I really enjoyed. For me, those, I mean, the whole thing was great, but for me, those were the three biggest points that I'm gonna take with me and think about. Abhay and I would like to thank you so much for being on the podcast with us as a guest. It was a super informative podcast. I really enjoyed having you here. So thank you.
Yeah, cheers, guys. I
I'd
love
love
the
to.
conversation. Go
Yeah,
ahead, bro.
I'd love to have you back on because I'd like in a couple of months' time or in a year's time to understand how you've been doing, because I'm very intrigued by the challenge you guys have taken on. Longevity is like, I mean, obviously it is a big space, but I'm very curious as to how things progress for you, and I'm rooting for you.
Yep, absolutely. Me too.
Yeah. Hopefully, I don't look like Brian Johnson in a year's time. So,
No, it's okay. The moment like when he began, when Prithvi started talking about longevity, like Brian Johnson's face, for better or worse, just flashed up in my head, because there was a whole year where I was just seeing nothing but him. Like he was everywhere, right? He was
yeah.
the guy who drank his son's blood. I don't know if that is even true, but it's just stuff like that, and his before and after pictures are starting to scare me a little bit. But
if
anyway,
you
that's for
if you
go
look
on.
at him at like a just go a couple
Yes,
of years back at a
yes,
tech
yes. I know what
conference.
you're talking.
Yeah.
Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. He looks like this ragged old startup founder, and then
Yeah.
fast forward a couple of years later, and he just looks like something out of the Twilight series.
Yeah. But yeah, yeah. I think you should definitely have Brian Johnson's picture there. Will certainly
Yeah,
help get
definitely.
eyeballs. But yeah, fun conversation, guys.
Yeah.
I truly loved it. I think it didn't feel like I was being interviewed or anything. It just felt like a good amount of this thing. And yeah, always great to be back with Cotton Boys. So yeah, it's a pleasure being here.
Yeah. This was a happy coincidence. I had no idea it was like Trikatonen showing up on a podcast. What are the odds? Uh, but this was really this was really
Life is
fun.
not
We
like
looked. This is Bangalore being Bangalore. Bangalore's too small.
it is.
Like when you first said you were from Bangalore, I was wondering, there is what are the odds? We haven't run into this guy yet. What are the odds? And then you mentioned Cottons. I was like, that's the connection right there. But anyway, this that's us for this week's episode. I will leave links to Prithvi's socials and in the comments, as well as a link to Varalife. Do go check him out. And we will see you on the next one. If you haven't liked and subscribed or shared this video, what are you doing, guys? Please do that. It really helps us. It helps us and helps the channel grow. We'll see you on the next one. Take care.